Everybody, I'm Stacy with Stacy's Organizing and Decorating for Life. I'm here to help you organize your thoughts and decorate your perspectives. Today our topic is going to be about going from villain to victim, and then how the healing part comes in. We have harmony and humanity. So if you're tired of all the division and all of this and upset, and you too would prefer to follow a more positive algorithm mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, then please hit the like and subscribe button below and hang in here. Before we get started though, I have to remind you that I'm not a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, or scientist, even though we know I like those things, and much of the things I share about have a scientific and a spiritual realm to them. But what I am is a life coach, and as a life coach I have a webpage called stacyforlife.com, and on this webpage there's a description of the services that I provide as a life coach dealing with addiction, codependency, and grief, but not exclusively to those things, because underneath those things lies a desire for healing and healthy relationships, as well as development of spiritual and soul consciousness. It's about going within and feeling comfortable in your own skin. I work with people as young as 17 years old on up to 70 plus. So if you or anyone you know need help in any of those areas, or you just want to go read my monthly blog, please feel free once again to check me out at stacyforlife.com. And then you can always reach me as well at stacyreinick@gmail.com. So let's get started on the topic today. So we go from, oftentimes there's the victim and the villain role. But in trying to connect us more so together rather than divide us, I try to examine these things. And as I said last week, we observe these things, because last week we talked about forgiveness. And in that forgiveness talk, I also talked about the villain and victim. We have a saying in recovery that victims stay victims. And through our self-exploration and recovery, we look at what was done to us, because I'm not saying that there is not victims. Some of us have been victimized. And then we also look at what we have done to other people. And then when we do that, we find this interconnectedness. Now, not everybody does this, but many of us do. And in healing work, that's what we do, is because we find that when we work on our own healing, it doesn't do any good to point the fingers at somebody else. So the reading that I did today on Facebook, and I do on Tuesdays, Topic Tuesday, and I usually post a quote or where I'm thinking about going with the topic for the day, and I ask for suggestions for the topic. So I'm going to read those to you right quick, and I invite you to check me out. There's Stacy's Organizing and Decorating for Life on Facebook. You can follow that page, or you can follow my personal page, Stacy Renee. So and be my friend, okay? All right, so here's what I wrote today on Facebook. And there's the comments, and I want to thank everyone who commented and made suggestions, or even just told me that they liked that this was a topic. I appreciate you all, because it's very helpful for me to see if I'm resonating, because most of the time I feel that much of the stuff that I'm talking with and dealing with is not just happening to one, because we are all in this together, and that's why I hope to bring unity to people more so than division. It's feeding that positive algorithm of your mind, body, soul. Here we go. So people will teach you how to live, how to love. I wish I knew how to edit. I would edit this part, but I don't. So I'm going to start over, and this is a quote by Meredith Marple. I'm going to post it here. People will teach you how to love by not loving you back. People will teach you how to forgive by not apologizing. People will teach you kindness by their judgment. People will teach you how to grow by remaining stagnant. Pay attention when you're going through pain and mysterious times, and listen to the wisdom life is trying to teach you. And again, that's by Meredith Marple. Okay, so let's look at this and address this. And what it has here is the polarities, and we all know how I love the polarities. It says people will teach you how to love by not loving you. Sometimes we gather and collect evidence of this till we get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because when we don't love ourselves, we collect mirrors back to us of that not self-love. And hence this is where that forgiveness I talked about last week comes in, is when we learn to forgive ourselves. We go through this healing process of, why did I allow myself to get hurt like this again? Why did I allow this on me again? Rather than to continue pointing fingers at other people for hurting us, when we learn to take responsibility for our pain. I'm not saying you can take responsibility for your hurt. You may have to, I don't know. That depends on who you're working with in that instance. But to take responsibility of our pain and our growth leads us into people who teach you how to forgive by not apologizing. You see, because that's an expectation sometimes, is that we want, when we look at this triangle, there can be a triangulation to this. I only listed the two, the victim and villain, but there can be the triangulation and codependency, and let's talk about that being a trait. Let's don't talk about that being a person, because we don't call a person, we don't say, oh, this, some people may say this person is codependent, and I'll say this is a codependent trait, and I'm catching myself on that more and more, because in talking with clients, I'm trying to get this out of our labels, because as we talked last week, and I'll explain that in a minute, but the traits, like any of us can have any certain number of traits. And I listened to this girl today named Teal Swan, and she was very good, and she also talked about the triangle of hell, which is the victim, the villain, and also the hero. Many of the times, rather than addressing these feelings, we're looking for somebody outside to make us feel loved. We're looking for somebody outside to offer and give us forgiveness, or for us to forgive. And we teach people, people teach us kindness by their judgment, or not. Sometimes we're judged and, we aren't kind. And that's where the victim and villain play that switch role, right? Is when we feel judged and we're not kind. And typically that's what's going to happen. When you have a villainous person, they're going to say they're a villain because of something that happened to them, their victimization. So it's all about compassion, as Jennifer was talking about, is we all can have these certain traits. People will teach you how to grow by remaining stagnant. Sometimes we have people, we pick people in our lives that because we're used to this kind of behavior. I myself picked somebody where I would consider stagnant as somebody who was emotionally unavailable. See, there's some people who can only get so far in relationships, and then that's it. We want to think that something's wrong with us. We can go back to Don Miguel Ruiz, don't take everything so personally, but we do, right? So we think something's wrong with us when somebody gets to a certain point in a relationship that they can no longer do this, and they may break up with us, and they may come back, they may not come back, but we find that this relationship keeps having the same insane pattern. And so we have to empower ourselves. For me, when this has happened, what I did, instead of going and getting another relationship, because perhaps the emotionally unavailable person did go get in another relationship, I did not. I chose to continue to work on myself and my healing, and what in me kept choosing this, and what in me kept saying that even though I know that this is going to end up this way, or it seems like it is, and after a while, we learn that there's a precedence to this, because as we're gathering evidence of our not self-love, we learn that there's a precedence, when we look at legal terms and stuff, and there's a precedent. So once something happens and happens and happens, this tells you that this is going to continue to happen, because nothing changes till it changes. So it says pay attention when you're going through pain and mysterious times, and listen to the wisdom life is trying to teach you. So when you work on yourself, you have the wisdom within yourself and your soul to know where you need to heal and grow. So to be able to do that, you have to get quiet and quit complaining and playing the victim to people, but just trust that one or two few people, as I've said before, that can help you process this stuff so that you can indeed see if you're being the victim. And then oftentimes, the villain, who we portray the villain is like I said last week, is the catalyst. So here's the thing, is that in one of my clients, we were talking one day, and she said she didn't like the villain, thing where you're talking about the codependent. Now, I oftentimes will recommend people to certain people who have stronger programs than I on codependency. I work one-on-one, but there are people who have actual codependency programs to help you process and manage this. I have some people that work with me, on codependency, and then they also follow this program because, in our many different disorders, and I wanted to tell you what this Till Swan said today, and I thought this was very interesting. She said, self-concept founded on shame. Because whether you're codependent, whether you're narcissist, whether you're any other disorder other than that, which mostly that's what people talk to me about is these disorders, but I had people with personality disorders, there's people with bipolar disorders, and I deal with people in all these kind of disorders. And the same thing is that a narcissist can be codependent, a codependent can be narcissist, a bipolar can be codependent and narcissist. And so all of it, so how can we judge people? Last week I talked about judgment. And so how can we judge people based on their disorder against our disorder? Because I'm an addict. That's my disorder. And so, in codependency too, but I don't title and label myself that way unless it's going to serve a higher purpose. You know what I mean? Because I'm in acceptance. And once we get to acceptance of those things, they don't seem like such a bad label, because I don't mind saying I'm an addict. But I don't have to go up to everybody I meet and say, I'm an addict. Only if it's going to serve a higher purpose do I need to really disclose that, because it is an anonymous program, right? So the thing is in my addiction, I could be narcissist, I can be codependent. I still work with people on codependence today. I started working on codependence back in 2002. And why do I work on it today? Because codependence is as subtle of a disorder or disease, whatever you want to call it. Some people say but codependent is as subtle as addiction is about sneaking up on you, if not more so. Because in addiction, I know if I'm picking up something to put, outside of my body to put in my body. But in codependence, because of the program of the outside world, because of the lack of knowledge that our parents and people before them had about codependency, we've been trained to be codependent to a great degree. And so the thing is that when we learn to heal and honor ourselves and to come in harmony and to find that balance in humanity and to understand that we can have any of these traits, that's the humanity part, is that people want to judge people based on their own sores. This person has this wound, this person has this wound, but at least my wound's not like that wound. And it's like, it doesn't matter. The bottom line, I feel like, is love in this world. That's what the world needs more of. The world needs less judgment and more love. And oftentimes it takes a terrible, terrible crisis like 9/11 or something like that for people to come together. But we shouldn't need that. But at this time in the world, with the fear has caused so many people to be divisive, right? And to start measuring their goodness about what they do and don't do compared to another person, rather than having that humanity and the compassion that Jennifer talked about. And I got 2 Jens on there. I got 2, but so I call 1 Jen. So when we get comfortable in our own skin, this addresses Charlotte and Jennifer, Jen. So when we get comfortable in our own skin, we understand, and when we forgive ourselves, we understand that maybe we can't talk to every person in the room. We try to, greet those that we can, but we also don't allow ourselves to be taken hostage by one person if we don't want to talk to them. I've done a lot of work on myself, and I've had to learn how to set boundaries and these kind of things. One thing that people know about me is that if I am sitting with you and spending time with you, it's because I want to sit with you and spend time with you. Not that I feel bad about anything, not that I or I don't have any kind of excuses for wanting to spend time with you. If I'm sitting with a person, I'm spending time with them because I want to spend time with them, and they know that. Same thing as if I'm doing something for a person, I'm doing it because I want to do it. I'm able to have those boundaries. So when we have the boundaries, we know that we're doing it, and the people around us know that we're doing it because we want to. I've said many times before that Lisa Nichols' grandma says, if you want your yeses to be more powerful, you have to learn to say no. So sometimes I have to say no, and sometimes it's things that I want to do, but I know that how to organize my thoughts, organize my time to where I am able to do those things, and I have to prioritize some things. Sometimes when I go into my home state, Texas, when I go to Texas, there's some people I get to see, some people I do not get to see. I wish I could see them all, but realistically, when we live in a realistic world, and most of my friends know this realistic world, is that I can only see so many people. So each time I go in, I try to see somebody that I didn't get to see the last time. I don't consistently always get to see everybody that I wanted to see, and especially with COVID now. So I think that with this pandemic, we also have to understand that everyone's doing the best that they can when we look at whether or not people can see us, or we can see people, or who all we get to see. Because of the COVID, we don't know where people are at. We don't know who's compromised, who's not compromised, but we can certainly have compassion for those who are compromised, and we certainly can have, compassion for those who are not compromised. Just because we may be compromised doesn't mean we have to hate on somebody who is compromised, or just because we are not compromised doesn't mean we have to, judge someone who is compromised. It's about, being grateful when it comes down to it, because if you're not compromised, you can be very grateful. And if another person is not compromised, you could still be grateful for them if you are compromised, you see. So why would we think that because we are compromised, we couldn't be grateful for somebody who is not compromised? And why could we not be grateful ourselves and be compassionate to somebody who is compromised? Whether it be, their job, their money, their health, their relationship status, whatever it is. When people can't speak to us, can we not take it personal? If there's something going on, this is something that I had to learn, is that sometimes there's things going on with other people, and they're just trying to process life the best they can. And so I choose to spend my attention and time focused on those who do and are able to talk to me. And then sometimes there's people that I can sense are feeling a little off, and maybe I can reach out to them and help them, if I'm in a good place. But it doesn't serve myself or anybody else for me to try to be something that I'm not, and then there's where we get resentments. That's where we start feeling that villain and victim behavior, because it does become a crazy cycle. Because I would even dare to say, I know for me and my addiction, when I would do my narcissistic type behaviors, because narcissistic behaviors are really a lack of maturity. So when I would do my narcissistic behaviors, so is codependence, because we haven't healed. That's all it is it's this stuff happened to us as children, and we just didn't heal, so we haven't grown up yet, right? Because we haven't done the healing work. So I would behave poorly, and then feel bad for behaving poorly, then be generous, and then feel taken advantage of for being generous, and then be mean and spiteful and maybe passive-aggressive because I was generous. And none of that behavior serves people. So fortunately, through the 12-step programs, and trust, I've worked more than one program to be able to find that harmony and humanity. It's not that I just woke up like this, because I have had all these things that people questioned me about. I have had, the compassion. I have been apathetic. I have to come together. So, with the empathy and apathy, is I have to be able to come together in the center. And you do too. That's where the harmony is always found. That's where I'm always trying to bring back to you, is the harmony is found in the center. That if we're too totally empathetic and trying to feel people's feelings, then we could become codependent. Have the codependent behavior, and become codependent and be too much in people's business and involve too much in what's going on with them and not in our own life. And then we're apathetic, we may not be as connected to humanity as I'm talking about, and may just be a me and materialistically. So when we can come together in harmony, we can be with our materialistic self and knowing our own wants and needs and desires, but we can also help encourage somebody else's wants and needs and desires in a healthy way. I hope that this makes sense. So when you look at these, and I encourage you, please in the comments below, if you can come up with these polarities, like I just, stated with the empathy and apathy, but if you can have one, you can have the other one. And so many of these disorders we can all have together. I'm not saying that, it's comfortable to live with these disorders, and I'm not even suggesting that you have to. But I'm suggesting that you don't have to judge it, that you can learn how to set those boundaries and become comfortable with you and your own skin, so that you don't have resentments when you do set a boundary, that you don't have resentments if you don't set a boundary is what I'm trying to say, because that's when we get resentments, is when we don't set those boundaries, then we become a victim, and then when we become a victim, it starts that whole cycle over again, because everybody's been a victim. You may not want to hear this, but everybody's been a villain too. We all have the capacity to be both. It's where the yin and the yang come in, as we have the capacity to be both. And we're just all on this earth trying to do the best that we can. Now you can, look at it in the other way if you want to, and some people will, that diversity still. But how is that going to serve you? How is that going to help your health? To be concerned about what's going on with other people instead of yourself. How is that going to help your physical, that's your physical there, but how is that going to help you mentally to not be in your own business and to maybe feel like you're procrastinating or falling behind in your own work? And I don't know if that's the subject or topic of the procrastination, but we tend not to be able to fulfill what we need to do for ourselves if we're in somebody else's business. We don't have that freedom when we're in somebody else's business. What we learn is when we get in our own business, we have a lot more freedom than we do if we're in somebody else's business. And then, spiritually, I think that we all desire to have love as the spiritual premise of everything. And if we can have love, we can have it all. We can have everything. So, as I'm saying, I hope that this helps guide you mentally, spiritually, emotionally. I know emotionally we all feel better when we can feel better, but feeling better is about dropping those unrealistic expectations and to be an acceptance. Acceptance of all the types of relations that we have, whether it's work, children, and we're going to get frustrated with these things, but we don't have to let it own us. We just don't. We can breathe, we can remember who we are, become back in our own skin and quit making it about us, everything, and just, find something else to trust. Trust that the universe has your back. How does it serve you to think that it doesn't? And that you're in lack. I've chosen to think that everything happens in the right and divine time. And that doesn't mean, in my acceptance of that I'm not trying to get it to hurry up sometimes, but I have learned that if I sit back and wait and just do the next right thing, that everything will be fine. So, I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope that you've gotten the information that you needed. And if you haven't, then please let me know so I can do another video, so that we are clear, because it is my intention and my motivation to you to lift this vibe of the universe, to help it be an easier and a more loving place for you to live in. I know it's not always popular, because I can see in lots of the videos that because I'm on the computer, I'm looking at things, and I see that a lot of the divisive ones do get, sometimes seems like higher ratings than the ones that are trying to evolve and grow, but again, it's a personal decision. We can follow our own intentions and motivations. Okay, so I hope this brings you much peace and love, and that it's made something clear to you about how you can set those choices. So until next week, I hope that you have a great weekend, and I look forward to being with you again next week. I'm sorry I'm getting tired. This video day didn't go exactly like I wanted to either. But I'm not a victim and I'm not a villain. It just is what it is, and I can make adjustments. Maybe next week I'll do something different in recording or something like that. I can make the adjustment. And you can make the adjustments in your lives too. But please do it out of love. Okay? All right. Talk to you again next week. I wish you much love. I have both hands today. And peace. Thank you so much.